You know what's fascinating about highly intelligent people? Most of the time, they don't fit the image we've been conditioned to expect. When people think of someone with a very high IQ, they often picture a person who is visibly smart, someone constantly speaking, confidently explaining ideas, solving problems out loud, or showcasing knowledge in obvious ways. But real-world psychology paints a very different picture. Intelligence, especially at higher levels, tends to be quiet, subtle, and sometimes even misunderstood. Cognitive psychologists often explain that intelligence isn't just about how much information you've stored, but about how your mind processes, connects, and interprets the world around you. That internal processing doesn't always look impressive from the outside. Instead, it shows up in small, everyday habits that are easy to overlook or misinterpret. Once you start paying attention, though, certain patterns begin to stand out. These patterns reveal how a highly active, analytical mind operates beneath the surface. Here are 11 surprisingly common habits, often found in people with very high intelligence, expanded with real-life examples so you can recognize them more clearly. 1. Spending a lot of time alone. Highly intelligent people often enjoy being alone, not because they dislike others, but because solitude gives their mind the environment it needs to operate at full capacity. When there's less noise, fewer interruptions, and no pressure to constantly respond or engage socially, the brain can slow down in one sense while going deeper in another. This kind of mental space allows for reflection, creativity, and complex problem-solving that is difficult to achieve in busy or highly social environments. For many intelligent individuals, solitude isn't empty. It's actually full of activity happening beneath the surface. Think about someone who chooses to stay home on a weekend to read, think, or work on a personal project instead of going out with friends. From the outside, that choice might look boring, lonely, or even antisocial. People may assume they're missing out or avoiding life, but internally, that person may be exploring ideas, connecting patterns, or mentally working through problems in a way that feels deeply engaging. For example, a writer might sit alone for hours, not just typing, but imagining scenarios, structuring narratives, and refining thoughts. What looks like doing nothing is often intense cognitive work. Another example could be a software developer or engineer who spends long periods alone, not just writing code but mentally designing systems, anticipating challenges, and solving issues before they even appear. Or a student who prefers studying alone because it allows them to truly understand concepts rather than just memorize them. In each case, solitude becomes a tool for depth rather than a sign of withdrawal. It's important to understand that this preference for being alone doesn't mean these individuals lack social skills or relationships. Many of them value meaningful conversations and connections, but they are selective about when and how they engage. They often prefer quality over quantity when it comes to social interaction. Solitude simply provides the uninterrupted mental space they need to think clearly, process deeply, and function at their best. 2. Constant curiosity about everything. One of the clearest signs of high intelligence is a kind of curiosity that never really switches off. It isn't something that appears only in classrooms or intellectual discussions. It shows up in everyday life, often in moments most people overlook. Highly intelligent individuals tend to question things that others accept without a second thought. Their mind is naturally drawn to understanding the why behind almost everything, from human behavior to simple routines. This curiosity isn't forced, it's automatic, like a background process constantly running in their mind. It's also important to note that this curiosity isn't limited to big philosophical questions like, what is the meaning of life? While they may think about those too, their curiosity is often focused on small, ordinary situations. For example, they might observe a brief interaction at a grocery store and start analyzing it in detail. Why one person reacted impatiently, why another responded calmly, and what that says about personality, stress, or environment. What seems like a random moment to most people becomes a source of insight for them. In another scenario, they might use a mobile app and immediately begin questioning its design. Why is this button placed here? Why does the app guide users in this specific way? Instead of just using the tool, they think about the psychology behind it, how it influences behavior, attention, and decision-making. This kind of thinking extends to almost everything: conversations, systems, habits, and even their own actions. For instance, after making a decision, they might reflect on it later, asking themselves why they chose that option and whether there was a better alternative. Or they might hear a common belief and instinctively question its accuracy, wanting to verify whether it actually holds true. This doesn't make them skeptical in a negative way. It makes them engaged and mentally active. Over time, this constant questioning builds a deeper understanding of the world. Curiosity becomes more than just interest. It becomes a driving force behind learning, growth, and insight. It pushes them to connect ideas, challenge assumptions, and explore possibilities in ways that go far beyond surface-level thinking. 3. Talking to themselves, internally or out loud. At first glance, talking to yourself might seem unusual or even a little awkward. But in reality, it is a powerful cognitive tool, often linked to higher levels of intelligence. Psychologists refer to this behavior as self-directed speech, and it plays an important role in organizing thoughts, improving focus, and guiding decision-making. For highly intelligent individuals, this isn't random or meaningless chatter. It's a structured way of thinking out loud, or internally, helping the brain process complex information more effectively. When someone speaks to themselves, they are essentially turning abstract thoughts into something more concrete. For example, a person trying to solve a problem might say, "All right, if I start with this step, then the next part should follow." This isn't confusion, it's the brain actively breaking down a problem into manageable pieces. By verbalizing the process, they can track their reasoning more clearly and avoid mental overload. It's similar to writing things down, but instead, it happens through speech. This habit appears in many areas of life. Students often whisper instructions to themselves while studying or solving difficult questions, reinforcing what they are learning. Athletes use self-talk to guide their performance, saying things like, "Stay focused," or "Keep your balance," to maintain control and precision. Even professionals preparing for important presentations or meetings may rehearse out loud, refining how they communicate ideas and anticipating possible questions. In each case, self-directed speech helps improve clarity and performance. It also strengthens memory and attention. When thoughts are spoken, even quietly, they engage more parts of the brain, making it easier to retain information and stay focused on the task. For someone dealing with complex ideas, this can make a significant difference in how effectively they process and recall information. Internally, this habit often exists as a constant dialogue. Highly intelligent people may not always speak out loud, but they frequently talk through ideas in their mind, evaluating options, questioning assumptions, and refining conclusions. What might look strange or unnecessary from the outside is actually a sign of an active, organized, and highly engaged cognitive system working behind the scenes. 4. Comfort with saying, "I don't know." Highly intelligent people tend to have a clear awareness of the limits of their knowledge. Instead of feeling pressured to appear knowledgeable in every situation, they are comfortable admitting when they don't have all the answers. This ability is not a lack of confidence. It's actually a sign of intellectual honesty. They understand that knowledge is vast, complex, and constantly evolving, and that no one can fully master every subject. Because of this, saying, "I don't know," becomes a natural and even necessary part of how they think and communicate. This mindset is closely connected to what psychologists describe as the Dunning-Kruger effect, where individuals with limited knowledge often overestimate their understanding, while those with deeper knowledge recognize how much complexity truly exists. In simple terms, the more you learn, the more you realize how much there is left to learn. Highly intelligent individuals operate with this awareness, which makes them more cautious about making absolute claims. For example, in a conversation about finance, health, or technology, a knowledgeable person might respond with, "I'm not completely sure about that aspect," or "There are multiple factors involved, so it's hard to give a simple answer." Meanwhile, someone with less understanding might speak with full confidence, offering oversimplified or even incorrect explanations. The difference lies not just in knowledge, but in how each person approaches uncertainty. In real life, this can be seen in workplaces, classrooms, or even casual discussions. A skilled professional might pause before answering a question, carefully considering the variables before responding. If they don't know, they'll admit it, and often follow up by seeking accurate information. This approach builds trust because it shows they value truth over ego. This habit also opens the door to continuous learning. By acknowledging gaps in their knowledge, highly intelligent people remain curious and willing to grow. They are not trying to protect an image of being always right. Instead, they focus on understanding things more deeply over time. What might look like uncertainty on the surface is actually a reflection of precision, humility, and a strong respect for complexity. 5. Overthinking small details. An analytical mind doesn't switch off easily. The same mental ability that allows someone to break down complex problems and see patterns others miss can also lead them to overanalyze even the smallest aspects of everyday life. For highly intelligent individuals, thinking deeply isn't something they turn on only when needed. It's their default mode. As a result, even simple situations can trigger layers of reflection, interpretation, and evaluation that most people would never consider. For example, after a normal conversation, they might replay it in their mind, examining not just what was said, but how it was said, how the other person reacted, and what those reactions might mean. They may ask themselves questions like, "Did that come across the way I intended?" Or, "Why did they pause before responding?" What seems like a straightforward interaction to others becomes a detailed mental review. This isn't necessarily insecurity, it's pattern analysis applied to human behavior. The same thing happens with decision-making. Even small choices, like picking between two options, can turn into a deeper evaluation process. They might mentally simulate different outcomes. If I choose this, what happens next? What are the long-term effects? Is there a better alternative I haven't considered? Their brain is essentially running multiple scenarios at once, trying to find the most efficient or logical path. In everyday life, this might look like taking longer to make decisions, revisiting past actions, or carefully weighing options that others would decide on quickly. For instance, someone choosing a career path, making a purchase, or even sending a message might pause to think through every possible implication. To an outside observer, this can appear as indecision, hesitation, or even anxiety. But internally, it's a sign of a mind that is constantly optimizing and refining. They are not just reacting, they are analyzing, predicting, and adjusting. While this habit can sometimes lead to mental fatigue or unnecessary stress, it also allows them to catch details others overlook and make more informed decisions overall. In essence, their brain treats even small moments as problems worth understanding, turning everyday life into a continuous process of thought and evaluation. 6. A sharp and layered sense of humor. Humor is often overlooked as a sign of intelligence, but in reality, it requires a surprisingly high level of mental processing. To understand or create humor, the brain has to recognize patterns, detect inconsistencies, break expectations, and connect ideas that don't usually belong together. This is why highly intelligent people often have a distinct sense of humor that feels more subtle, layered, or even unexpected compared to the average. Their jokes are not always obvious. They often rely on timing, context, and deeper connections. For example, a highly intelligent person might make a joke that combines a historical reference, a psychological insight, and a current situation all in one sentence. To fully understand it, you need to catch all those layers at once. If you miss one piece, the joke might not seem funny at all. This is why their humor can sometimes go unnoticed or be appreciated only by people who think in a similar way. They also tend to enjoy forms of humor like irony, dry wit, or sarcasm that require context to decode. For instance, instead of making a loud or exaggerated joke, they might respond to a situation with a quiet, clever remark that flips expectations. In a serious moment, they might insert a subtle observation that reveals an underlying contradiction, making others pause before realizing the humor in it. In everyday situations, this could look like someone making a quick, insightful comment during a conversation that makes a few people laugh instantly, while others take a moment to catch up. Their humor is often fast, precise, and deeply tied to how they perceive patterns in the world. It's not about being the loudest or most entertaining person in the room. It's about seeing connections others don't and expressing them in a clever, often understated way. 7. Willingness to change their mind. One of the clearest signs of high intelligence is cognitive flexibility, the ability to adjust one's thinking when new information becomes available. Highly intelligent individuals rarely treat their beliefs as permanent truths. Instead, they see them as evolving mental models that can be updated, refined, or even replaced when better evidence appears. This approach allows them to stay aligned with reality, rather than being stuck defending outdated ideas. For example, someone might strongly believe in a particular strategy for business, relationships, or decision-making. They may have logical reasons and past experiences supporting that belief. However, if they encounter new data, a different perspective, or a more effective approach, they don't resist it simply to protect their ego. Instead, they pause, reassess, and adjust their thinking accordingly. This ability to step back and revise one's position is not weakness, it's intellectual strength. In everyday life, this might look like someone admitting, "I used to think this was the best way, but now I see a better approach," or "I hadn't considered that angle before." While others may double down on their opinions to avoid appearing wrong, highly intelligent people are more focused on getting closer to the truth. They understand that being right in the moment is less important than being accurate in the long run. This doesn't mean they are easily influenced or constantly changing their views without reason. In fact, they often require solid evidence or strong reasoning before shifting their perspective. The difference is that they are open to change when it is justified. They don't attach their identity to their opinions, which allows them to think more objectively. Over time, this habit leads to better decisions, deeper understanding, and continuous growth. By allowing their thinking to evolve, they avoid the trap of rigid beliefs and stay adaptable in a constantly changing world. 8. Being misunderstood because of these traits. Many of the habits associated with high intelligence are often misunderstood by others because they don't match typical expectations of how smart people should behave. Instead of appearing obviously confident, outspoken, or socially dominant, highly intelligent individuals often display quieter, more reflective behaviors. As a result, their actions can easily be misinterpreted, especially by people who are not aware of the thinking processes behind them. For example, someone who prefers spending time alone might be labeled as antisocial, distant, or uninterested in others. In reality, they may simply need uninterrupted time to think, reflect, or work through ideas. Their solitude is not about avoiding people. It's about creating the mental space they need to function effectively. Similarly, someone who asks a lot of questions might come across as difficult, skeptical, or even challenging authority. But in most cases, they are not trying to argue. They are trying to understand things more deeply and ensure that ideas or systems actually make sense. Another common misunderstanding happens when highly intelligent individuals change their minds. To others, this can look like inconsistency or lack of confidence. People might think, why can't they just stick to one opinion? But from the inside, this change is often the result of new information, better reasoning, or a more refined perspective. It reflects growth, not confusion. In a workplace setting, this gap becomes even more noticeable. An intelligent employee might question existing processes, not to resist authority, but to identify inefficiencies or improve outcomes. However, managers or colleagues may interpret this as defiance or negativity. The intention, to improve, gets lost in how the behavior is perceived. This disconnect between internal intention and external perception is common. Highly intelligent people often operate with thought processes that are not immediately visible, which makes their behavior harder to interpret. Because their thinking happens beneath the surface, others may judge the behavior without understanding the reasoning behind it, leading to frequent misunderstandings. 9. Late-night mental activity. Many highly intelligent people notice that their minds seem to come alive at night. While others are winding down, their thinking becomes sharper, more creative, and more focused. This isn't just a random habit or poor sleep routine. It often reflects how their brain responds to quieter environments and reduced external stimulation. During the day, there are constant interruptions, responsibilities, and social demands that can fragment attention. At night, those distractions fade, creating the ideal conditions for deeper thinking. When the world becomes quieter, their mind has more room to explore ideas without being pulled in multiple directions. For example, someone might struggle all day to solve a problem, only to suddenly find clarity late at night. A writer may feel blocked during the day but become highly productive after midnight, generating ideas effortlessly. A student might finally understand a complex concept while reviewing it in the silence of the night. In these moments, their brain is not just working, it's operating at a deeper level of focus. This late-night mental activity is often linked to a sense of freedom. There's no pressure to respond to messages, attend meetings, or manage external expectations. Without those demands, the mind can wander, connect ideas, and think more creatively. It's also a time when reflection becomes easier. People may revisit experiences, analyze decisions, or plan future actions with greater clarity. In everyday life, this might look like staying up later than intended, getting bursts of inspiration at unusual hours, or preferring to work on important tasks when everything is quiet. While this habit can sometimes disrupt normal routines, it also provides a unique advantage, the ability to think deeply when the rest of the world is still. For highly intelligent individuals, nighttime often becomes a space where their thoughts can expand without limits. 10. Observing more than speaking. Highly intelligent individuals often have a tendency to observe before they speak, especially in unfamiliar environments or situations where there is a lot of new information to process. Instead of immediately jumping into conversations or trying to dominate discussions, they take a step back and watch what's happening around them. This isn't because they have nothing to say, it's because they are actively gathering data. Their focus is on understanding the dynamics of the situation before contributing to it. For example, in a meeting, while others may rush to share opinions or fill silence, a highly intelligent person might remain quiet at first. They are paying attention to who is speaking, how ideas are being received, what tone people are using, and even subtle cues like body language or hesitation. They may notice patterns: who tends to lead, who follows, which ideas gain support, and which ones are ignored. By the time they speak, they have already built a mental map of the situation. This habit also shows up in social settings. At a gathering, they might spend more time listening than talking, observing how different personalities interact. They may notice small details others miss, like shifts in mood, underlying tensions, or unspoken agreements within the group. This allows them to respond in ways that are more thoughtful, relevant, and effective. When they do contribute, their input is often concise and well-structured. Because they've taken the time to process information first, they don't need to speak as often to make an impact. A single comment from them can carry more weight than multiple surface-level contributions from others. To an outside observer, this behavior might look like shyness, hesitation, or lack of confidence. But in reality, it reflects strong pattern recognition and strategic thinking. They are not disengaged, they are analyzing. By observing first and speaking later, they ensure that what they say is intentional, accurate, and meaningful. 11. A continuous search for meaning. One of the deepest and most defining habits of highly intelligent people is an ongoing search for meaning. This doesn't always show up as deep philosophical conversations or dramatic life questioning. More often, it exists quietly in the background of their thoughts. A constant, subtle curiosity about how life works and what it all adds up to. They naturally look beyond surface-level experiences, trying to understand the reasons behind actions, choices, and outcomes. They might find themselves asking questions like, why do people behave the way they do? Or, what actually drives the decisions we make every day? These aren't just random thoughts. They reflect a deeper desire to understand patterns in human behavior and the systems that shape life. For example, after a conversation, they may reflect not just on what was said, but on why it was said, what emotions were involved, and what it reveals about the relationship. This search for meaning often extends into their personal life as well. They may regularly evaluate their career path, relationships, and habits, asking whether these truly align with what they value. For instance, someone might pause and question whether their job is fulfilling or simply routine, or whether their daily actions are moving them towards something meaningful. Even small decisions, how they spend their time, who they interact with, what they prioritize, can become part of this larger reflection. Importantly, this habit doesn't always lead to clear or final answers. In many cases, the questions themselves remain open, but that's part of the process. Highly intelligent individuals are often comfortable with uncertainty, as long as they are actively exploring it. The goal isn't always to find a perfect answer, it's to keep understanding evolving. This continuous search keeps their mind engaged on a deeper level. It pushes them to grow, adapt, and refine their perspective over time. While others may focus only on what is happening, they are often focused on why it matters, making their experience of life more reflective, intentional, and layered. When you step back and look at these habits, something interesting becomes clear. Many of them don't look like intelligence at all on the surface. In fact, they can sometimes appear as the opposite: quietness mistaken for disengagement, curiosity mistaken for doubt, flexibility mistaken for uncertainty. But underneath, these behaviors reveal a mind that is constantly processing, analyzing, and exploring. Intelligence isn't always loud. It doesn't always announce itself. More often, it operates quietly, shaping how a person thinks, questions, and interacts with the world.